Hello everyone and welcome to the TradCast, the podcast that connects traditional archery enthusiasts. Today is episode number 19, and on today's show, I'll be discussing the rise of the lady hunter with hardcore huntress Beka Garris. This is going to be an awesome show. Let's jump right into it. Alright everyone, welcome back to another episode of the TradCast, the podcast that connects traditional archery enthusiasts. And this show is for the first week of May 2015. And tonight on the show, I have another awesome guest interview for everybody. I recently had a discussion with Beka Garris, who, for anybody who's not familiar, she is a very dedicated lady hunter, and she came on the show for an interview, and I talked with her about the rise of the female hunter over the last several years, the rise in female participation in hunting and in the outdoors in general. And in this interview, I asked Beka a little bit about how she got into hunting, some of her past hunting stories, and then I also got some of her insights on the hunting industry and on how parents and adults can get their young daughters into the outdoors to start enjoying this great way of life, the hunting way of life. But before we get into that interview, I do want to give you guys a couple of quick updates on turkey season here in upstate New York. Okay, well, turkey season so far has been a little bit of a struggle. It's only our first week here in New York. In fact, we won't get into a full week of the season until Friday. But the opening weekend, I went down to the central New York area, met up with a good buddy of mine, and Paul and I hunted for the first 2 days on some state land down down where he lives in the central part of New York. There's a lot of state land down there. And we decided we would give that a try. And to tell you what, the first day, Friday morning, it was very warm. Very untypically warm, honestly, for the first day of May. But temperatures were way up into the 70s early. And I tell you what, me and Paul walked a lot of miles that day. I mean, I didn't keep track, but I would say we had to have walked anywhere from 6 to maybe 8 miles, and we just covered all kinds of state forest roads and walked in the woods, and we just pretty much covered that entire state forest that day, it seemed like, and we never even heard a single gobble the entire day. So that was very disappointing. We did see a few hens while we were driving around to a couple of different spots within the forest. But that was all we saw the first day. Didn't see any birds while hunting, and never heard one single gobble the entire first day, which was very disappointing to say the least. And on the second day, Paul and I hunted a different state forest in the same area, and we didn't hear much the first few hours. Covered several miles just walking around and calling and trying to get a response gobble, but that didn't happen. And then we were actually on our way back to the truck. It was about maybe 7:45 8 a.m. in the morning, and we heard a gobble, and it sounded like it was I would say several hundred yards, maybe 300-400 yards away, and we were, making our way towards that gobbler, heading down into a little drainage, and we heard some calling behind us, back a ways behind us, which sounded like somebody else calling. And sure enough, about a minute later, here came a pickup truck racing up the road and stopped right near us. A couple of guys get out. One guy goes up the road. He's calling. This gobbler's answering him. So these guys pretty much heard that bird gobbling from back down in the forest further, and were racing up there to get on him. So needless to say, that kind of put a halt on Paul and mine's efforts on that bird, because we didn't want to get involved in in that kind of situation where we're competing with other guys who probably were hunting with shotguns. We just didn't think it was worth it, and Paul and I were both using our traditional bows, and so we pretty much got run out on that bird. And those guys actually ended up spooking that bird off, and they left the forest a little bit further, a little bit after that bird left, and we never did hear anything else the rest of the morning. I went back home, and I was out. I hunted. I also hunted yesterday morning. Had up here at my house, up here where I live on one of my properties, and I had heard several birds gobbling before light, but they were kind of right on the property line to where I have access to hunt and where I don't have access to hunt, and those birds went, of course, the wrong direction and ended up going on property where I don't have access to go after them. So I did not have any luck yesterday morning, besides that first little bit of gobbling action at first light. And I also went out this morning on my other farm and heard 3 or 4 different birds gobbling, but I've only got a little small 45-acre piece up there, and I'm pretty sure all of these birds were off of my property. And I tried doing some calls, but I hunted there for 2-3 hours and never did hear a gobble once daylight broke. Heard them on the roost gobbling, but once daylight broke, the gobbling pretty much stopped, and I didn't see a turkey this morning. So that's the latest on my season. Things have been pretty slow. I have heard some birds gobbling here up home, which I am encouraged about that. But the trip down to central New York didn't go as planned. I was expecting us to have a little bit more action than that, but that's why they call it hunting and not killing. And I know that teammate Justin Vickers, he also went out. He's been busy this week with some personal life things, and he was able to get out last Sunday, and he heard some birds in the area, and I think a nearby hunter ended up taking a jake on that hunt. So Justin also has not had any luck either so far. So that's the latest on our season. Hopefully the action will pick up here in the next week or two, and we can have some success to bring you. But right now, I want to jump into this week's interview segment with Beka Garris. Okay, everyone, like I mentioned earlier, I'm now interviewing Beka Garris for the show, and I now have Beka on the line. And tonight we are going to be discussing the big increase in hunting participation by women and young women over the past several years. We are also going to be hearing about some of Beka's past hunting stories and how she got into hunting. And the goal of this show is to help encourage future generations of lady hunters to start enjoying the hunting way of life. Welcome to the show, Beka.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I wanted to do a show on this topic, and I follow your Facebook page. I know that you're very dedicated to hunting in the outdoors, and I thought you'd be a great guest to have on the show.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Well, Beka, I wanted to start out. I know it's turkey season for a lot of us. I'll actually start turkey hunting tomorrow myself, but I wanted to have you just tell the listeners a little bit about how your 2015 turkey season's going.
Well, it's been a little rough here so far. I actually took a little girl out on youth season here in Ohio, and we did really well. She shot a big bird. But I've been trying to take my bow out and get a bird, but I've had some close calls, but nothing yet. So this week, I'm trying to take my gun, gonna run and gun a little bit, and hopefully I can call one in. They've been hemmed up lately, so.
Yeah, well, good luck.
Please.
Good luck. We're actually going to be starting here tomorrow in New York ourselves, so.
You have a late season.
Yeah, we're late for everything up here. But it is what it is, and we'll get at it tomorrow. So I've been seeing a few birds around, so I'm hoping we can have some luck.
Good.
Yeah. Okay, well, Becca, I'm going to jump into the series of questions that I wanted to ask you for this show. And the first question I had for you is I just wanted to have you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, how you got into hunting, how you got into bow hunting, and I know you also shoot traditional archery equipment as well, and I wanted to have you maybe discuss a little bit about when you started doing that also.
Okay. Well, my dad's a really big hunter, and he's the one who got me introduced to hunting, fishing, all that. My mom, not really so much into it, but I have 5 brothers. My dad brought them all up the same. I have 3 sisters, and they weren't really into it as much, but I always was. And I grew up in New Jersey. I had to be 10 years old in order to hunt in New Jersey, but my dad started taking me when I was like 7. So the first thing I ever hunted was turkeys. And that's always been kind of the thing for me and my dad. I didn't start bow hunting until I was 16 when a woman my dad worked with gave him a women's bow. I always had hand-me-downs for everything. And it was a women's bow, and I decided I'd like to shoot it. And a couple days later, I took my hunter's test, and I just always loved it. It's my favorite thing to do now. As for traditional, that's fairly new to me. I just started last year, and still a whole new learning experience trying to learn all instinctive. I mean, you don't use a release, you don't use sights. It's just, just using your bow. It's kind of similar to bow fishing a little bit, so that's why I thought I would kind of like it. But I haven't really hunted anything with it yet.
Okay, very nice. Yeah, I'm actually 7 months into switching from compounds to traditional, and there certainly is a huge learning curve there. But
it really is.
Yeah, but I'm excited about it myself personally, and I wanted to ask you that question here for the show. Now, Becca, I also wanted to ask you another question. I know you just touched on it a little bit about how your father got you into hunting in the outdoors. I was going to see if you could give us your perspective on how parents with daughters can or should approach, introducing their daughters to hunting in the outdoors.
Well, I feel like it's very important to make it a fun experience. You can't force them into it. You have to let them make that decision on their own. But you just take them along on your hunting trips and just make it fun. If it gets too cold, take them inside. Make sure you bring snacks, water. You don't want them to get bored, miserable. And if they enjoy being out there, they're going to want to keep on doing it. And that's how I personally feel you can get kids more into it. I feel like now it's easier to get particularly girls into the sport, as now there are more and more women in the industry. I remember when I was little, there weren't really that many women in the industry, and looking through like Bass Pro catalogs and Cabela's, pretty much the only woman you saw in there was Brenda Valentine. And when I was really little, I didn't think the girls were allowed to hunt. Like, my older brother, he would go out hunting with my dad, and I would sit there in the house and I'd be like, man, I wish I could do that. And then I asked my dad, and he was like, well, yeah, you can hunt. And I was like, oh, okay. But now, I mean, there's so many women out there who do it, and they're all over the TV now, and they're in magazines, and it's just something that young girls can see and be like, oh, I want to do that. So I feel like they have that going for them as well.
Yeah, I would certainly agree there. I certainly agree that it's easier nowadays. I know even when I was growing up, you never really saw or heard about a woman or a young girl, wanting to go hunting.
Yep, exactly.
Whereas now it's kind of certainly becoming more the norm than the exception, for sure.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, and I would also agree, like you mentioned, keeping it fun for the kids, because, I've seen, even some of my own friends and even relatives who've got, younger kids, even if they're boys, they just try to, push it on them too much, and the kids kind of get, they kind of get overwhelmed with it all early on.
Exactly.
Yeah, good
And
points.
then I also feel like if you push it on your kid, they're going to want to do it for you to make you happy, and it won't be something that they want to do for themselves.
Very well said. I agree. Now, with that in mind, Becca, I wanted to ask you, do you remember your first hunt? And if so, I was looking to see if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the first hunt that I ever remember going on, I actually wasn't hunting. I was 7 years old. It was my 7th birthday, and it was mid-April. My birthday's April 13th, and in New Jersey, the season usually used to start a little earlier. It used to start around then, and my dad took me out turkey calling, and I remember we had a bunch of turkeys come in, and he was letting me use his little push-button box call, and I don't remember a whole lot about that day. I just remember seeing the turkeys come in, using the call and everything. I thought that was the greatest thing ever. I just loved it.
Okay, now, were you successful on that hunt, or?
No, I actually don't remember if it was turkey season or not. I don't remember if we were just calling or if we were hunting.
Okay, very nice. And just out of curiosity, I was just wondering, can you remember your first time deer hunting or big game hunting?
Um, I'm not sure if I remember the first day. I remember the first year that I ever went deer hunting. I didn't get a deer the first year. The second year I did. I got my first deer. But, it was winter. It was always really cold. It was always me, my dad, my two brothers. We would all go out in lawn chairs, sit up out in the woods and just wait for the deer to come by. And my first year I got on youth day when I was 11, and I shot that with my great-grandpa's double-barrel shotgun, so that was kind of cool.
Very nice. Now, earlier you mentioned how there's a big increase in the amount of women in the hunting industry specifically, and I was wondering if you could maybe tell us, in your opinion, why you think this is and kind of what was, the driving force behind that, if anything.
Well, I had the answer to this question, too. Now I need a minute to think of what I was going to say.
Oh, that's no problem.
I don't know. I feel like I don't. I'm trying to think of how to word this. I don't know. It's not just a man's world anymore, and as there are more and more women getting into it, it's becoming sort of the popular thing for outdoor women, and yeah, I totally forgot what I was going to say. I'm sorry.
That's no problem. I mean, I know, my perspective on that, kind of what I think is, I think it was kind of a snowball effect. It started out, like you mentioned, Brenda Valentine, she's been in the hunting industry forever. And, one girl sees her and wants to mimic her. And then it was just kind of a snowball effect. And just gradually over the years, we've just seen more and more women, getting into hunting and into the outdoors. And it certainly has been for the better, I think.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Now, another question that I had for you, Becca, is for any woman or young woman who's on the fence about whether or not they want to get into hunting or, get into the outdoors in general, whether it be fishing or trapping, what would you say to help encourage these women who may be on the fence and kind of undecided?
I think that they should go with someone, not as a hunter, just with a hunter, just to see what it's like. And if they think that it's something they like, then yes, they should do it. But, I mean, you have to think about all the perspectives of hunting and why you want to do it. I mean, for me, a big part of it growing up was putting food on the table. Like, you have to think about why do you want to do it, why do you not want to do it.
Yeah, those are great points. I mean, you certainly don't want somebody, whether it be a guy or a girl, getting into hunting, just for something to do,
Yeah.
I certainly agree that, there has to be, some backing behind it. And, kind of what I found is, whether you're a guy or a girl, it's usually something that's a part of you early on in life.
Yeah, definitely. That's what it was for me.
Yeah, and for me myself as well. I mean, it's just something that I really remember, wanting to do since I was old enough to even know what hunting was.
Yep, exactly. And another reason I feel like all these new women coming into the industry, becoming role models, is all the women and men and boys and girls out there that don't have someone in their life to be a mentor for them. They can look at those people and be like, oh, they're enjoying it. They're making a life out of it. They have someone to look up to. And we used to not have that so much, especially as women. So I think that's a really good thing.
Yeah, no doubt. And, for certain, social media is playing a much bigger role than it was, even 10 years ago.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
You were pretty much only, like when I was growing up, you were only kind of exposed to, your family and friends and kind of what happened there.
Yeah.
And, maybe the occasional TV show, but,
yeah.
Okay. Now, to kind of follow up with that theme, now, without question, women in the hunting industry are, like you mentioned, playing that role model, factor for other younger females that are, thinking about getting into hunting or have been into hunting for a little while. Can you tell us, in your opinion, the importance of these role models that are in the industry now and the responsibilities that they face?
Well, I feel like women hunters in particular, are targeted by a lot of people and under a lot more scrutiny than, say, men hunters. And I feel like you just have to be careful of what you put out there on social media, on TV. You have to try to be someone that you would want your daughter to look up to, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with you there, no doubt. When I, see, some of these, posts or statuses, I guess you'd call them, that, some of the, female hunters in the industry are putting out. And sometimes you're like, okay, what's the motivating factor behind that?
Yeah, there's always some of those.
Yeah, so I think that's a good point that, you certainly want to, like you mentioned, do things and act in a manner that you'd want your child to look up to and act themselves. Okay. Now, do you think there are any specific challenges in hunting that are specific to women in general?
Yes. Something that I've come across a lot. Not so much in the past couple of years, but when I first really started kind of trying to get into the industry, not everyone treats you equally since you're a girl. There's still people out there that think, oh, you're a girl and you're hunting, but you're probably just having everyone do it for you. And people don't necessarily think that you can or that you are doing everything on your own, or that you actually can hunt, or that you actually can scout, or any of that stuff. It sounds kind of silly, but that's one of the biggest things that I've run across.
No, I would back you up there. I mean, it's something that I think's common around every part of the country, every part of the world, probably, when it comes to hunting.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because historically, I mean, I'm talking hundreds, thousands of years ago, it's just kind of always been a man thing. But
Yeah.
no, I would certainly agree with you there. I think that a lot of guys are kind of hung up in the past and thinking that she's a girl, she can't hunt.
Yeah.
When that's certainly not the case. Okay. Now, also, like we mentioned today on social media, we see a lot of female hunters that are receiving, like you mentioned, negative attention, and a lot of this is geared, from anti-hunters. Why do you think this is, and how do you combat this issue if you face it?
I feel like antis think of women as the weaker sex, and they think that it's easier to attack them than, say, a man. I've had some antis comment and say that women weren't created to kill things or to go out there and shoot their own food, that it's not human nature to go out and do that, and, comments along that sort of line. And I think that the best response to all negative comments, all antis, is just, if you want to make a statement, go ahead and make a statement. But for the most part, just ignoring them, deleting them, not commenting back, that is the quickest way to get rid of them.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's probably, something that's relevant in any regard. I mean, you don't want to add fuel to the fire, so to speak.
Exactly. And you see a lot of these hunters are coming back and making comments that are just as bad as the antis, and that really makes hunters look bad. I mean, you can't do that.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you just, like you said, either delete them or just ignore them, they're going to get the point that you're not going to crack, and they'll try to move on to a different target.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, now, Becca, I'm going to give you a scenario, and I wanted to get your response to it. A young lady hunter shoots her first deer or her first turkey, or other animal for that matter, and she's receiving negative attention for that, whether it be on social media or from her friends at school. How do you think that woman or that girl should go about handling this negative attention for that?
Well, I think that sort of situation, you do need to stand up for yourself. And if you just give the negative people facts as to why you did it, I mean, hunting is legal, obviously. And you're hunting to put food in your freezer. How is that any different than going to the store, buying your food? Usually, if you just respond with logic, people don't really know what to say. And if that doesn't work, again, you just have to ignore them.
Okay, yeah, I would agree. I mean, like we mentioned on the aspect with anti-hunters, you don't want to, add any fuel to the fire again here,
Yeah.
And I think standing up for yourself is certainly an important thing.
Yes, it is.
And okay, great. Now, another question I had for you, Becca, is, from following your Facebook page, it's obvious that pretty much any free time you have, you spend that outdoors, whether it be bow fishing or bow hunting or whatever. A question I had for you is, are you as obsessed with hunting as, a lot of us, guy hunters? And if so, I was looking to see if you could tell us what your favorite game animal is to hunt and why.
Well, I definitely consider myself as hardcore as anyone out there. Basically all I do in my free time, as most people who follow me know. My favorite animal to hunt is a whitetail. I haven't hunted that many different species of big game yet, but I just love bow hunting whitetail. I've got to hunt a couple different states so far, and I just love it. It's my favorite. Nothing can compare to that for me.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Any particular reason why, or is it just they get under your skin like everybody else?
Yeah, I don't know. They're just so addicting. And especially once I started bow hunting, because, it's a little bit more of a challenge than with a gun. And I just love that time of year, and just to get away from everything and go sit in the woods. I just love it. I love everything about it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I know a lot of us, hardcore hunters, or even just hunters in general. You talk to, most people, and for sure the white-tailed deer is usually up there on everybody's list.
Yep. They taste really good.
Yeah, that they do. Venison is definitely good eating. Now, I guess a follow up question to this, and I just thought of this. I know last year you were after this one particular buck you were calling Super 8.
Yeah.
Any signs of him still being around, or?
Well, I didn't get any more trail camera pictures of him, but I got a whole bunch of pictures of bucks that had shed on camera. I'm pretty sure one was him. I didn't find his shed, but I know he bedded on my neighbor's property, and I'm not allowed to go shed hunt over there. So in a couple weeks here, I'm going to put out some trail cameras and see what bucks I got starting to grow antlers on camera, and hopefully he'll be back this year.
Okay, very cool. I'm sure everybody that follows you will be looking for those updates. Which brings me into my last question. Now, Beka, for anybody who wants to learn more about you or to start following along with your adventures in the outdoors, what are some avenues that people can do that?
Well, I have my Facebook page, Beka Garris, and I have my Instagram page, which is @wildernessbabe. And I do have a YouTube, but I don't use it that much, and that's just my name, Beka Garris.
Okay, and for anybody who's listening, I will be including links to those avenues in the show notes. So anybody that wants to just quick reference them, you can do that in the show notes for this episode. And Beka, I want to thank you again for taking the time to answer these questions here on the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Okay, it was my pleasure, and we'll all be looking forward to seeing how your 2015 season goes.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, take care, Beka.
You too.
Yeah, we'll talk to you later.
Yep, bye.
Bye. Okay, everyone, there you have it. A look back at my recent interview with Beka Garris, where we discussed the rise in female participation in hunting, and we heard some great stories from Beka on how she got into hunting, and some of her hunting stories, and some of her insights on the topic. So again, I want to thank Beka for taking the time out of her busy schedule to be this week's guest on the show. And I've only got one last reminder for everybody. If you enjoy what we're doing here with the podcast, I would really appreciate it if you could jump on over to iTunes, leave us a quick review. It's not only a great way for us to get the podcast to more people so that we can hopefully help more people out, but it's also going to be a great way for me to continue to get great guests like Beka Garris here on the show. And I will see you next week right here on an all-new episode of the TradCast.